Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. I'm TCaptainX. Today we're going to be covering the updated best loadouts in Black Ops 6 Warzone after the Season 2 Reloaded update, because there was a good amount of buffs and nerfs in this update. So there was a lot of kind of different small quality of life things and a few bug fixes in this update. We did get a new perk, Low Profile, which basically increases your movement speed when you're crouched or prone. It does a few other small things, but I just don't really think this perk is that good and that really worth using. And the Mountaineer perk is still not fixed. It is apparently set to be fixed in sometime shortly after this update. They did heavily nerf the experimental gas grenades, which is great because they just are very, very hard to deal with and have been really overused lately. There are several new weapons in this update, but they're not really like ARs or SMGs. There is this special weapon, which is coming later in the update, which is like a blade launcher for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collab. And there's several melee weapons here, but again, no actual just like normal weapons. They did pass a kind of general buff to all MW2 and MW3 weapons. They reduced all of their idle sway, weapon bob, all that kind of randomness with the aiming. So a lot of those guns should feel a lot better to be used. I don't think there's any of them that are going to be, you know, absolute meta contenders. But a lot of the ones like the STG, the D tier, the Superior, they're going to be really solid options to use. I'm going to very quickly explain what guns were buffed and nerfed and just kind of be short and sweet here. You can go to the patch notes on callofduty.com if you want to look at these in more detail. The AK got buffed. The Cypher got a very nice buff, which is going to make it a top meta contender. Craig C got a decent buff. Model L got a nerf, so this was a meta gun, not going to be meta anymore. XM4 already had a hard nerf in the Season 2 update, and they murdered it again in this update, so it is just not nearly as good. And then the GPR also got a bit of a buff. For SMGs, the C9 got a very small nerf. This is still going to be a top meta contender. The Compact got a buff, got some better range. PP919 got a small nerf. And then a few adjustments, kind of like buffs and nerfs to the GP, MG, and the Fang. The AEK full auto mod is getting a buff, but apparently this did not go live in today's update. A few other changes to the SWAT, the Sarkov, and the sniper adjustment to the SVD, and then some melee changes, but apparently these are also not going live until slightly later. All right, so let's now kind of break down what is the long range meta first. So looking at the assault rifles, again, it's pretty much all the Black Ops 6 guns. MW3, there's just some decent ones, but none of them are going to be really top meta contenders here. We are on our loadout website, ggs.ai. We are finally updated with stats. However, our algorithm still needs some tweaking, but you can get on here and look at stats and compare guns here and look at the best loadouts here. So this is a TTK visualization of weighted TTK. You're going to see guns like the Goblin has amazing TTK. Cypher also very, very good. The XM4 you'll notice here at the bottom, it is slow. They murdered this thing. The XM4 is just straight up not worth using anymore. Then looking at the time to kill chart, you're going to see the XM4 in yellow. It's so much worse than it used to be. It's just straight up not worth using anymore. The Goblin in the red line has amazing TTKs up to about 70 meters, but remember it is a semi-auto gun, so this is going to be a lot harder to use, and it's going to be a lot harder to actually achieve this TTK. But if you have a good trigger finger, you are a high-level player. The Goblin is phenomenal. The Cypher in the blue line and in the AK in the orange line are kind of neck and neck for a lot of areas. However, the difference between these is that the Cypher has much less recoil, and it seems easier to use. So the Cypher is going to be the clear resurgence meta, but if you have decent recoil control, it is a fantastic option for big map as well. After that, when it comes to big map for more of a lower recoil option, I think the Ames is going to be the #1 option. The Ames and Model L have kind of similar TTKs now, but the Ames is just buttery smooth when it comes to recoil. Model L did catch a nerf. It's still solid, but I don't think it's going to quite be that like super dominant meta option like it was early in Season 2. And then moving over to our SMGs here, this one is, I think there's a little bit more variance, a little more up for grabs on what would be the meta. My top 3 are going to be these listed based off TTK. We've got the Compact, the PPSH, the C9. A lot of the other BO6 SMGs are solid, but they're like kind of a step back from those 3. You'll see the Compact and PPSH have great TTKs. C9 is also good. If we scroll down here and look at the actual TTK chart, the Compact in the orange line has the fastest TTK up to about 13 or 14 meters until that first range drop off. But the PPSH in the blue line is only slightly behind, and it has way better range here. So PPSH is going to be far more versatile. It also has a bit less recoil than the Compact. The C9 in purple though is going to be kind of your all-rounder and easier to use SMG because it has just lower recoil. Not quite as good TTKs, not bad by any reason, but it just has very low recoil, very good mobility. So I think for more beginner level players, the moderate, the C9 is going to be your go-to. But personally, I would say the PPSH is #1 overall, but the Compact will be #1 in those very close situations for aggressive players. I think the KSV in the green line is a great option, especially as a sniper support, but I think it really excels, especially with a gunfighter 8 attachment build. It's not as good with a 5 attachment class. The PP919, another solid option. It's good, but it's no longer as dominant as it used to be. And then guns like the Jackal are just, they're fine, but they're definitely not a meta contender anymore. There are several other SMGs that are worth mentioning, but I'm just kind of putting some of the most notable ones up here to talk about. All right, so we're going to start with assault rifles. At number 5, I'm going to have the AK. Fantastic for resurgence, but a little bit more recoil. I build a lot of these very similar. This is going to be my 8 attachment build here. There's so many optics you can use, but on a resurgence, I tend to prefer more of just like a 1x optic, but you can go 2x or 3x. Compensator for most recoil control. Of course, you can switch this to a suppressor to be suppressed and not appear on the minimap. Reinforced barrel is what I go with most of the time, but if I'm playing big map, I will often switch this to gain twist for that better bullet velocity. Always use vertical foregrip for recoil control. Almost always I'm going to use extended mag 2 or 3 if there is an option. Quick draw for faster ADS. And then for the stock, you can go heavy, or I often like the combat stock, which is going to give us both flinch resistance and aim walking movement speed. And then lastly, for the 5th attachment, if it is a gun that has a good amount of recoil, I'll go recoil springs. But if I don't mind the recoil, then I will instead go over pressured for faster bullet velocity. And then for basically all of my ARs, I do the same thing nine times out of 10 in terms of making a 5 attachment build. And that is just taking off these last 3 attachments and keeping these 5 here. At number 4, we have the Model L. Again, this was nerfed. It's still very good, but I think the aims is a little bit better overall than it. Very similar build here. This is a gun that I feel like the recoil is fine, so I can go suppressor, but again, you can swap this to the compensator. You can go gain twist or reinforce. Rest of the build is pretty much the exact same. And again, for fire mods, you can go over pressured for bullet velocity, or you can go recoil springs for a letter recoil. This one does have fantastic bullet velocity, 1500 meters per second. So if you want a near hit scan build on big map, this is a great option for that. And again, for a 5 attachment class, we're going to remove these last 3 attachments here, unless you could go an iron sight build and then you could keep on the fire mod. At number 3, we have the Goblin, which is going to be the fastest TTK, but it is a semi-auto, so a little bit harder to use. Now, this is one, especially on big map, I do prefer to use a 3x, but on resurgence, you can go 3x or 1x. I do swap for the ported compensator on this one because this does first shot recoil control, which since this is a semi-auto, I feel like that helps that recoil a lot more. Otherwise, this build's pretty much the same. You can get away with extended mag 1 on this one since the fire rate is not nearly as fast. Again, for a 5 attachment build, we're going to take off these last 3 attachments. At number 2 overall for our assault rifle, if you just want a super low recoil, easy to use, great for big map, we're going to go with the Ames 85. This thing has super low recoil. You definitely can use a suppressor, but if you want just buttery smooth recoil, go with the compensator. Rest of the build just the same as all of the other ones. On big map, I would probably go gain twist here. You can go 3x here if you like as well. And you also can elect to switch the overpressured to the recoil springs if you want even lower recoil. But this right here is kind of generally my favorite setup. And again, we can take off these last 3 attachments if we're going to go with a 5 attachment build. And then what I'm saying is the number 1 overall AR this season or after this update, especially for resurgence, is going to be the Cypher 091. And this is an iron sight build. You don't have to use this, but I love this iron sight build. It is a lot of fun to use this target laser on this one because the target laser really cuts away any aiming idle sway when we first zoom in, although this laser is visible in ADS. Of course, if you don't want that, you can totally just take that off, put it like a 1x optic back on. But what's nice about using the iron sights on this is number 1, the gain twist barrel has a slightly better iron sight than the reinforced. So if you are going to go iron sight, I would probably lean towards gain twist. But this allows us to use over pressured and we can keep that really high bullet velocity. And there's not a big difference whether or not you use a 5 attachment or an 8 attachment build if you're okay with the iron sights on this one. Again, if you don't like the irons, take off over pressured and put an optic back on. All right, moving on to SMGs. What I'm going to say is the number 5 overall, but there could be so many different SMGs that could be at this spot. It is going to be the PP919, super low recoil, big magazine. A lot of options we can build this, especially changing around which magazine you want to use. You really can't go wrong with any of the magazines, but I like Fast Mag 1 generally for a little bit faster ADS and mobility. And again, for a 5 attachment build here, I would just take off these last 2, the laser and the fire mod. This is a great 5 attachment build for really any map. If you want a pure sniper support SMG, the KSV is very, very good. It's got solid range, good mobility, low recoil here. I would say this one benefits to use as a gunfighter build though, especially because the iron sights aren't that good. So you really want to be able to use that optic slot here. So it's really nice to have recoil springs, vertical foregrip, and with even lower recoil, you could just go with the compensator. This build is very low recoil, very, very easy to use. For a 5 attachment though, I would probably take off the optic and then the stock and fire mods. This would be my 5. But if you want that optic on a 5 attachment build, I would just take off the rear grip for an optic. All right, so I think the C9 is really about the number 3 SMG, but I think the top 3 are very, very close. A lot of people are saying this is the number 1 SMG, and I just don't agree because the TTK is just not nearly as good as the PPSH or as the compact. If you want this to have like basically 0 recoil, again, go compensator instead of the muzzle here. And again, for a 5 attachment, we're just gonna take off these last 3 attachments here and just run these first 5 for a 5 attachment build. Then the fastest time to kill SMG, which I'm saying is gonna be number 2 overall, but number 1, if you're a very aggressive close quarters type player, is gonna be the compact here. This is my 8 attachment build. Now this one I do like to use an optic on because iron sights, they're okay, but it's nice to use it if you have the option. But again, for a 5 attachment build here, we're going to take off the optic and we're going to take off these last 2 attachments and just keep these 5 here. Definitely want to make sure you're using extended mag 3. This is one I would recommend using a compensator because this gun does have a moderate amount of recoil. All right, and coming in at the number 1 overall SMG, great range, great mobility, great TTK, and a very fast fire rate is the PPSH. This is my 8 attachment gunfighter build. This one only has 8 attachments. It does not have a rear grip option, but the rear grips and stocks are kind of combined into one attachment here. There are several options we could use here, although I think the balance stock is probably my overall number 1 option. I also, for the underbarrel, I've been kind of starting to switch back to just the vertical foregrip instead of the Ranger because sprint speed itself is not that important in this game. It's more movement speed or tack sprint speed. And the Ranger foregrip only gives you sprint speed, which we don't actually use all that much. Again, for even lower recoil, swap that suppressor for the compensator. Now, one thing to note about the PPSH that you need to know is if you don't use a suppressor, if you use something like a compensator, this thing has horrendous muzzle flash. So if I go in the firing range here and shoot, see all of the gunfire that is like shooting out. It's very hard to see what you're looking at. So this is a gun I would recommend you use a suppressor simply to avoid all of that muzzle flash. I do want to quickly cover things like secondaries, perks, and whatnot. Melee doesn't really matter. Use whatever you want. I'm using Donatello's bow staff because why not? As far as your secondary, if you're going to use a gunfighter thing, probably using something like the Syrian is a good option because it's kind of like an SMG. I still don't even have it leveled up because I just never really bothered to use it. Otherwise, I think the Strider is my favorite pistol just because it has a very fast fire rate. The Rogakova is okay. It's fully automatic, but its time to kill is very, very slow compared to other SMGs. As far as tacticals and lethals go, this depends a lot on your playstyle and on the map. If you are an aggressive player, stims are still a fantastic option. But I think for big map, especially for ranked, smoke grenades are absolutely the way to go. The experimental gas grenades have been nerfed quite a bit. Normally when I'm playing Resurgence, I would run the throwing knife, but I just prestige, so I can't use it, which is why I have the combat axe, and I have a bug, and I can't unlock this with my prestige token, so it's annoying. Otherwise, there are a lot of options we can use here as far as our lethals go. Honestly, I like frag grenades probably the most if I was playing like big map or ranked with the ability to throw like sky nades up really high. But spring mines and our blast traps are also very, very strong in this game. As far as perks go here, they still have not fixed Mountaineer again. So for now, I am going Survivor, which basically speeds up our health regen. For perk 2, I really like Tracker a lot, but or Sprinter. Sprinter is really good for mobility. Just you have that unlimited attack sprint. But I will say when they fix Mountaineer, I'm going to go Quick Fix in perk 2, and then I'll go Mountaineer in perk 1. As far as perk 3, I like Tempered the most generally, but I would say for ranked or big map, I do really, really like Ghost. Bird's Eye is also extremely good now after they kind of readjusted it, because now you get that directional cue of where they are for your UAVs, but you can also see vertical levels now. So I do really think Bird's Eye is worth using, although you cannot use Bird's Eye in rank. And then as far as wild cards go, I really think it's just Gunfighter or Overkill are going to be what you want to use. The way I do it is I have my AR Gunfighter and an SMG Gunfighter. So these are my 8 attachment classes. And then I have my 2 overkill classes with those same guns normally, but I will flip the order of them. So one of them I have my AR first, the other one I have my SMG first. That way, if I need to go to the buy station and buy a cheap gun for 2,500, I have that option. These are just other random classes I have. We didn't talk about snipers much. I will say overall, the LR762 is probably the best sniper because of its range and bullet velocity, especially for big map. However, for Resurgence and especially Rebirth, I would say the Frostline's a little bit better because it's just a little bit faster and snappier with slightly less range and bullet velocity. If you play big map though, the Cat AMR has an unlimited range one-shot headshot with not nearly as good as bullet velocity though, but not bad. It has a good amount of bullet drop too. This is a great option if you are very good at understanding how to lead your shot for big map. The Moors is also an interesting one with the charge barrel. If you don't mind using the charge barrel, it is extremely good. It also is unlimited range one shot and can have really good bullet velocity. I just personally, I hate the charge barrel and I would rather just go with the Cat AMR. And then of course the Kar 98 is still a phenomenal aggressive sniper, especially on Resurgence. I think the Frostline is slightly better overall, but the Kar is better for purely aggressive players because of its faster aim down sight speed. As far as it comes to pairing different guns with each other, I would generally say any of the ARs and SMGs you can interchange and mix and match however you see fit. As far as sniper supports though, I would generally say the PPSH or the KSV are going to be my top two options. Probably the KSV being number one as a pure sniper support. The only other AR I think that is worth maybe using as a sniper support on big map would be the Cypher. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap things up. I hope you found the video helpful. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content just like this, and come check out a stream here on YouTube or on Twitch, whichever you prefer. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.